Welcome to ABA on Tap. I'm Mike Rubio with Dan Lowery. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and always analyze responsibly. All right. Welcome back to yet another installment of ABA on Tap. I am your ever grateful co-host, Mike Rubio. To my right, as usual, Mr. Dan Lowery. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. We got a gold medal in hockey today.
First time
one since
in
80, right?
That's right. The miracle.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No spoiler alert. Sorry, Kerri. If you.
Oh, spoiler on which end? You just announced our guest. Anyway, we're going to get right to this. We've got a heavy hitter today. Somebody who's done all sorts of things, whether it's precision teaching and exploring curriculum and now moving into other aspects of technology and I'm guessing artificial intelligence and systems that assist in clinical decision making. So somebody who's very interested in the origin story, and then we're going to have a lot of ground to cover. I don't know that she's playing hockey, but there's certainly snow where she's at today. But anyway, without further ado, Dr. Kerri Milyko. Dr. Kerri, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. We record on Sundays, and we're just ever grateful for folks like yourself who take a little chunk out of their Sunday knowing that you've got kids, family, sledding, inner tubing, snow play to do out there, and you're choosing to spend a couple of hours with us. So thank you in advance for all your time and all your insight. How are you doing today?
Well, Mike, Dan, thank you guys so much for having me. This is an honor. I'm doing great. Yeah. Surviving a week of my kids being home for snow days. But yeah, no, they're older, so they're very independent and they're great. And you may hear them like screaming in the background from video games or something. So
we like
just
that.
A heads up.
We invite that on ABA on Tap again, just a very casual pub style conversation. So
there's been a multiple episode where Mike's daughters visited from different rooms in the house as well. So
yeah, it all works out.
I wasn't sure if I was supposed to show up with a beer.
Oh man,
although it is a little early on the West Coast.
So we've been trying to work that out a little bit. It's harder than you think, especially for people in different states. So that's something that hopefully will be up and coming as we can ask our guests, what's your libation? What do you like? Whether it's tea or something, and then be able to have something like that delivered so we can share that drink. So maybe we'll just start inviting it. Well, you're welcome to it. Yeah, we're sorry we couldn't provide, but please feel free. Just make sure you pace yourself so that we're.
Yeah. Sorry, I got my hydration here.
There you go. Me too.
Perimenopausal woman. I got hydration number one, fighting the patriarchy number two. So.
I was drinking my coffee, and Dad goes, "What is that, bourbon?" I'm like, "Wow, that's a little early, but what are you thinking about me these days? Am I slurring already?"
I don't know. You don't have a nice.
Irish coffee?
You got a whole dresser of coffee stuff in the kitchen, right?
Oh yeah, a whole yeah. Yeah, I don't have a collection of coffee. You're right. I've got a collection of bourbon. Good point. Touche, sir. Touche.
Vintage coffee.
Yeah, right. Aged. Barrel aged coffee. That's correct. Anyway, Dr. Kerri, we like to start with the origin story. You've done so much, so you're going to have a lot of ground to cover. Pace yourself here as well. Okay. And we'll sort of, take from that and, get us going. So tell us. We will. Dan's very good at that. And then
I'll take notes too.
Yeah, that's what he says. He's looking at his TikTok or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what he pretends. No, but we'll feel free to interject and certainly tell us about everything you've done up until now, and then that'll guide our conversation. So, what's your origin story, Dr. Kerri?
My origin story, way back in the day. I went to undergrad at University of Florida and hopped around different majors, landed on psychology. Really, I took a class with Dr. Hank Pennypacker. And he was like this class was, I think it was just like standard, like ABA, like just general, like a survey class, like ABA.
Yeah.
But if you guys are familiar, like if your listeners, I know you all are familiar with Pennypacker, but if your listeners are familiar with him, he was just like one of the truest of our early pioneers of the field, and looked at any sort of like social scenario and talked about how you can break down the situation behavior analytically. And so that's how he taught our just general ABA class. It wasn't the white book or anything like that. It was
cool.
Wasn't the Cooper book? Say what?
I actually never took a class using the Cooper book.
What? Blasphemy.
Which I kind of love.
Yeah. That's interesting. We'll get into that.
Yeah. But yeah, so he talked a lot about his experience. We read some books, like just some readings from there's this Skinner book that has different essays. It's called like A Pond for the Reflection. We had Sidman's Coercion and Its Fallout, things like this. And so he really create a passion for psychology for me. And I took other psychology classes, and they were, I thought, kind of fluffy and some of them bullshit. So
we have to come back to those too.
And I'm a mathy girl. And so when he had us charting, I was like, yeah, like data, this makes sense, right? Like this is more objective than subjective. And so I also took EAB with Tim Hackenberg, who also is a powerhouse. And between them, I was like, this is where I need to go. But at the same time, I'm thinking like, I'm not getting my doctorate in behavior analysis. This just led me to confirm that like psychology. And I was thinking like, you get the jobs in clinical psychology. So I went to apply for some grad programs in clinical psychology. And I went to Pennypacker to do a letter of recommendation. And
that's a nice letter. That's a good signature to have. I
also have a story around that. But yeah, so I go to him, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Did you learn nothing in my class?" And he's your most politically incorrect man, like
he's got it figured out. He doesn't care. Yeah,
he doesn't.
Very little scruples,
right? Like
I'm gonna tell it straight to you.
Yeah, and I was just like, and here I am, also back at that time in my life, I was very, people pleasing, and this is my mentor for all things now, and I was like, no, you've taught me everything. And you're like, he goes like, well, then why are you applying to these bullshit clinical programs? He's like, you need to go to a behavior analytic program. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize. I was just still really naive and green around all of it, And so we went online, and he was like going through each one. And at that time there was like, it was Western, UNR. I could stay at Florida. LSU was another powerhouse. But you know what I mean? At that time for PhDs, BCBA, like...
Was Kansas in there at that time as well?
Kansas, yep. But he, for some reason, I don't know why Kansas wasn't on his radar. I mean, he had like a whole course, and he was just, you will not go here because of this. And or he would go through the faculty, and he was like, okay, like this, nope, because like look what they're doing, and you don't want to do that. You want to, and so he would go through, and so that's how we like created, the plan for where I was going to apply to grad school.
Nice.
And so then I go and apply, and I'm interviewing at UNR with Dr. Patrick Gezzi, who eventually turned into my advisor. And he's like, oh, so I see this letter of recommendation from Pennypacker, and that's pretty, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you want to know what he said? And I was like, oh, can I?
Oh, wow.
And he's like, well, I'm just going to read you the first line. And I was like, okay. And this is going to date maybe us, because I feel like we're the same generation. He was like, my maiden name is Kaylin. And he goes, I am honored to introduce you to Kerri Kaylin, no relation to Cato. And if you guys remember, Cato Kalin was the dude living in OJ's like pool house that
that is
was
awesome.
Murdered and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. Yeah. So that's, apparently he said good things after that, but I don't know what they were.
What an opener. What a cool opener. That's awesome.
But so anyway, so I went to grad school at UNR, studied precision teaching there, and really UNR gave you a really great breadth of experience. They were very much of that, behavior analysis isn't here just for autism, and you need to have a job if like some pill or magic, whatever, like they always said in interviews, what if a pill was created and it solved all, issues with people with autism?
Well, RFK
What
was
would
supposed
you
to
do
do that
then?
by September, right?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they're a little, I think they missed the deadline on that, right?
Apparently. I was worried we were going to be out of employment, but
Right.
it looks like we're okay.
You went there. All right, you went there. This is I'm scared about where this might go today. This
Well,
everything
and I
is
didn't get into ABA because of autism. Like I got into to solve social issues.
nice.
I was actually at
Love
the
it.
time looking at, because what I did, I also was in a Penny Packer's lab, and I did precision teaching with teaching all of his all of his undergrad courses were through a precision teaching focus. It was personalized system of instruction. We learned with precision teaching. We had these modules. It was, like Fred Keller, like all of that stuff showed up in his classes. And so I was one of like the moderators for the class. I worked with a graduate student who is now Claire St. Peter. And so she was Claire St. Peter back then too, but she's she's the Claire St. Peter now. And so we went through, I did precision teaching with college students with the class, and then like helping those who were struggling. I also did research for his breast self-exams and clinical exams.
Oh wow. Wow.
Things like that. So it was actually, if I didn't get into, here's another story, a sliding doors moment. It was that if I didn't get into his lab, I was going to go work at Hooters. So it was,
Okay.
things could have looked a whole lot different if I didn't get into that. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
But anyway, so I didn't go for. I actually at that time didn't even know about ABA's, intensive focus with autism. Iwata was at Florida, but there was kind of like two sides of the camp.
Yeah.
And I didn't live in the Iwata world. I was in Penny Packer's world. And so with that, it was new when I went to grad school, seeing all these people who were focused on autism intervention. And that was, it wasn't a motivating factor for me. I just wanted to solve like big issues, which that is a big issue for sure. But I was like, hey, y'all are doing that. And this is where my passion is. So precision teaching led me down through looking at the system of education and how it's not really showing up for our children in the way that we know that it can. And I helped with Nick and Kimberly Behrens and Kendra Newsom to create then was called Center for Advanced Learning, CAL, which is now known as Fit Learning. And it was just a really cool time to be a part of it. It was definitely an age of innovation and discovery, which was really cool to be a part of. And with that came a lot of my experience with curriculum generation. I've always been like a systems girl. I see things like in organized buckets wherever I go. I'm a really great project manager because of some of these executive functioning skills. And so I brought that to curriculum. And I wrote a great deal of the curriculum that I'm sure they've revised since, but that was the starting of Fit Learning, along with all those other people that I named, obviously. And then I wanted to have my own business. I come from a small business owning family and moved back to Florida. My husband, who was also a precision teacher, he worked at Cal with me. We moved to Florida and opened up our own precision teaching center. It was running there for a few years until Florida was not a place for us. I found out that I couldn't, I'm a West Coast girl now. While I grew up on the East Coast, it had a different vibe when I came back. And so we came back to Reno. We sold our business in Tampa to who turned out was my first employee there, and her husband, Robin Elizabeth Hasbrook. And cool. We came out here. I worked for the government, the state. It was like the Medicaid just started providing services to children with autism. And given like where I worked at at Cal and then our own precision teaching learning center, I like about a quarter of my clients had an autism diagnosis. And it was mostly coming from like they've already received early intervention training and now they had to get caught up with academic skills.
Okay.
But then I had a lot of families who were like, we were not happy with the services. We understand, like, we really like your approach, but my child's not yet ready for 100% academic. And so I started, going into the world of just autism intervention services, but with a precision teaching focus.
Okay.
And so when I came out here to Reno, that's what we started creating. The business of like setting up an after school academic focused intervention center, learning center is tricky just because you have the majority of your students from 3 to 6, right?
Yep.
And so when you're thinking about a business model, it's, you have to be really creative in having contracts with school districts or private schools and homeschool students, things like that. So it's definitely like a hustle. And so I wanted to pivot and be like, okay, well, let's see, I spent some time, I have good friends, Michael Fabrizio and Kelly Ferris, who do precision teaching work for early intervention out in Seattle, and just really leaned into them and other people on how to create this here in Reno. And so I was hired by the state because the state just opened up Medicaid funding for ABA, but the rates were low. So no independent organization was signing on as a Medicaid provider. As such, the state was like, we will hire our own BCBAs. And like they actually did it in like, not a business person was running that because they just gave us as the BCBAs, we're independent contractors, the full reimbursement rate. And then we would pay we would have to hire our own little, it was like essentially we're building up our own business under kind of the state umbrella. Well, because they didn't know how to manage it well, after a few years, they're like, well, our program is going bankrupt. We're like, yeah, no shit. Like you didn't like carve out any overhead costs. But I mean, like, thanks.
Yeah.
Because we benefited from that. And so they gave us a few months to say, like, you need to, like, we will no longer be employing you as an independent contractor. You need to create your own business. And so I was like, done. I know how to do this, right? Like you essentially created the framework already. We just need to do the paperwork for it. So that led, and it was ironically at the time a group of friends and I were, including my husband, were looking at starting up a school out here in Reno. And so we already were, had plans in place. And so we pivoted and opened up this business. And it's called the Learning Consultants in Reno. It is now going on its 8th year. And it's expanded and it's doing well. And that's where my husband works along with my business partners, Jeff and Kelly Giesick and Jen Bono. Megan Zito is also one of the founders. And so we all like went to school together, or they were spouses. And so we opened it up and it was great. So during there, I was creating curriculum and I was doing online trainings and, precision teaching being the focus and all this kind of stuff. And my buddies, Rick Kubina and Dave Stevens, created Chartlytics. And at that time, we were in conversations about kind of putting my curriculum on Chartlytics. Well, little did I know that they were in the conversations with CentralReach. And so they stopped conversation with me, which I didn't know why. And I was a little grumpy about it because I was just waiting to sign the paperwork. But turned out like they had a really great deal, right? And so they sold Chartlytics to CentralReach. And then in between, like they were having some conversations with the then new CEO, Chris Sullins. And I was like, you know what? they bought a really amazing engine, but they don't have the full car. So many times when I was in precision teaching and trying to like disseminate precision teaching, I felt like I was Billy Graham trying to get everyone to do precision teaching. It was they wanted to, but they just didn't know how to get it off the ground because no curriculum was really lent itself to doing it or it's accessible. And what the only curriculum that was accessible was Morningside, which was school-based and academic-based, right? And so I was like, we need some curriculum for the majority of behavior analytics services that are being funded right now. And so I pitched that to this, Chris Solons, and he was like, hey, I'm like 3 months in. I have, give me some time to figure out what the landscape is. Conversation then came back a year later and was like, cool. Yeah, I'm in, but we're not going to, we don't want to like partner with you. We want to buy it and we want you to be an employee. And so, so I was like, at that time I was like, you know what? Cool. That sounds, yeah.
Nice and steady.
Yeah. And so I brought 2 people who, one was someone like one of my best friends that I've worked with and helped with curriculum when we were at Cal together, Molly Halligan, and then Kristen Smith, who worked with my business partner, Jen Bono, in Washington. And she's the best instructional designer I've ever seen. And at that time, I thought I was pretty damn good. And so I was like, okay, just kidding. She's pretty incredible. So the 3 of us created a pretty kick-ass curriculum that unfortunately is collecting dust. Yeah, tier. Just the software needed some enhancements to get it on there, some like technical, because you guys, I don't know if you guys, or you said you used CentralReach. I don't know if you remember this one January where it kept on, shutting down and like they had to like close it off and restart it and all that kind of, do you guys remember? It was like 20, it was before that or it was after the pandemic? I don't know, it was having some production issues. And so they had to do some things that was absolutely the right decision to do, which meant that a lot of the enhancements that the enterprise system needed to have to bring, because it's a beast of a curriculum, as it should be, but if people were to copy over their learning trees with the whole curriculum, it would shut down for like everyone. And so there was a lot of some technical things that needed to happen in order for that to work, and it just unfortunately never got prioritized. So then, so 4 years later, and we built this pandemic curriculum. Oh man, it was so cool. And we're like, let's release this, let's get this out. And then it was just, it is what it is. But a lot of cool things that happened during that time, a lot of great learnings. And it was great to have job security in the midst of the pandemic.
For sure.
And doors were open that never would have been open before. But then, they said your position is no longer going to be available in 2024. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool.
So all that stuff could come over now to like telehealth-based services or like VR stuff? I don't know.
They own it. Right. But it's there. I don't know. There's been a lot of turnover. So I don't think the people who are there know what to do with it, even though that they own it. But like we actually wrote it. It was a curriculum. It was, that's so pretty. But it was curriculum that it was allowed you to hop across instructional arrangements. I don't know if you see the curriculum now, you see like you open up a book and it's like, well, this is definitely for DTT, or this curriculum is just for precision teaching, or this curriculum is NET. We have these old pictures of us at like, we rented a house and we just stayed in there for like 3 days coming up with like, okay, how is this curriculum going to look, right? And we took together like content areas and a whole bunch of skills that we knew learners needed to have. And so we had it all on Post-its, and there was just like this entire room covered in Post-its. You can see the picture of Charlie from, is Always Sunny in feel
Oh,
is
yeah.
that
With
the
like making the
right with
connections.
the, yeah, with the lines,
That's
right?
what I was
And
thinking of. Yep.
the string, and that's kind of like how we all felt, right?
Yep.
And so, and with each skill, it also had it broken up into steps. And so it's like, we're going to take this, you start at like zero, right? You start at nothing, like 0%, zero rate per minute. And we're going to shape it up within this step of the skill, but there may be like 10 steps in order for you to actually learn the skill to where a casual observer could be like, oh yeah, they can do that. Right. And then we had, and it was all based on instructional design. We had, critical attributes, we had variable attributes, we had like, we also had what we called uncontrollable attributes. We're just like, we want these to always be in circulation. So that way we don't have like, people are like, oh, I only know how to do this in the contents of fill and stimulus control. Right. And so it was beautifully sophisticated. We had examples and we had scripts. We had teaching tips for people who are brand new BCBAs. We wrote it directly for RBTs who didn't have any experience to learn. It was incredible.
I love
it. And it's
it's sitting somewhere.
It's in a vault.
If they're not using it, can you buy it back?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have the money to do that. But
The influence,
but
Dr.
you know what?
Kerri,
Like,
the influence. That's what you've
but
got.
now, but like it was written without AI.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so, and we busted that out. It was a great experience. But now it's because I still work with Kristen, and the way that the world looks, and also like that was before 2020 when that was written. And look how our field has evolved, right? Curriculum should be an ever evolving thing. It should never be like, that's why I get so grumpy when we're like, we have these books and I have them on my shelf that it's like, peak enables and AFOLs, and also those are assessment. They're inventories, but they're not curriculum. And as such, you should have a curriculum that is ever evolving, because you don't want to be teaching something that was dated 20 years ago. And so now it gives us an opportunity to be like, how does AI show up in all of this, and where can we can we create a more appropriate criterion reference assessment? Because all those that I just listed are not created for the model in which we are operating under today. We are living in an insurance-funded, medically based ABA service provider, right? And those were all based on education. And, we picked a lane. I wasn't a part of that conversation. I don't know if I would have picked the same lane, but we picked a lane. Right. And we chose medical and not education. And as such, we don't have the tools, but yet we're using the tools that are really created for an educational model. And so these assessments lack standardization, or if you do bring in standardization, then there'll be a very long, if you ran the whole ABLES, it would take you hours upon hours to do the whole thing, right? Where that's not what Jim says. Jim says like, hey, pick only the pieces that apply to you. But then that makes it a non-standardized instrument, which makes it hard when you're talking to funders, and it's a whole thing. So
you mentioned something. I'm going to interject. You mentioned something very interesting to me, and there's correlations here, and maybe this is kind of an open-ended question, but the idea that so milestones is something that's kind of related to inventories, meaning that people will take the idea of missing skills and then we draw this straight line. So this is missing, this now becomes a goal. But that's a far cry from a curriculum, which is now going to list. So an inventory is part of a curriculum. An inventory by itself is not a curriculum, if that's maybe a good way to say it. Okay?
Thank you. Right?
So,
rectangle is a square. No, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't a square. Yeah.
There you go. And I'm coming at this from I really love early intervention. I'm coming at it from sort of our angle, where we worked really hard to combine like best practices in early childhood education with the ABA we do for early intervention. So we have a lot of open-ended, child-directed, play-based learning, which I think fits right into what you're saying. We start with this idea, this inventory of stimuli and ideas and things that might hit a certain skill, and then you have a script, and it's great to have that to launch from, and this will maybe launch us into an AI discussion. But then how that comes to life, the dynamics behind that, the interpersonal exchange of you have a clinician who has all these things at their disposal, but they're not just taking those and throwing them in. It has to come to life somehow. So the way you described it, the way you guys were planning these curriculums, there's probably a lot you can share with us regarding specific activity visions or combinations of stimuli that now hit those milestones toward those inventories. But now, again, you've got a curriculum. You've got a large set of ideas that includes all these things that really good clinicians do really well in bringing to life. So share a little bit with us about that.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you think about it like as a ratio, if there's like a line item on one of those assessments that we're all very familiar with.
Yeah.
It's likely that it'll take more than just a direct teaching of that in order to really get the right. You're going to need, you have these prerequisite skills, and then you have fractions of it. It's like, like different slices. It's let me brush off the dust here, but it's been a
well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like when I've been in schools, if the kid's not self-advocating, if they just write a goal, child will self-advocate, then that just solves everything. Right?
I love that we're getting to this
because it's advocate for all of that.
Boom, done.
No, so there is.
I think I heard you say
I don't want to get in trouble, but there is this. The example that I love is that there is a adaptive behavior assessment / curriculum that came out, and one of the goals was to teach learner how to swim.
Okay.
And there's maybe 300 words in the whole program that's written, like that probably includes the titles. And it essentially was like, you go to a body of water, make sure that they're wearing swim clothing, and you say, okay, time to swim.
What could go wrong?
Magic.
So that, I mean, with that SD,
happens,
right? Yeah, immediately, of course.
Obviously.
Of course. Did they list possible consequences on that one, on that contingency?
Right, yeah. I mean, it did say, make sure if you have a floating device if you need it. It's when you're thinking about teaching a skill, you need to make sure, Rick Cabina talks about all the precision teachers, Carl Binder, Rick Cabina talks about it as element compound, Carl Binder, component composite skills, right? Yeah. And so it's a constellation of skills. And so that's why it's really important for you to map out all of the dependencies. And we need to also look at different learning channels. It's like and this is something I think is not always strong in precision teaching, but it hasn't really come over into traditional ABA. But it's like, what is the sensory modality of input and output? Mm-hmm. How are they going to contact the discriminative stimulus, and what is the behavior in which they are to respond, and how strengthening up across multiple learning channels can create for a stronger retention, maintenance of the skill, and really promote generativity.
Yeah.
So let me just for a very easy example, and sometimes examples are easier when it's academic based. So you are trying to teach someone how to read. I want to teach you how to sound out these words, right? So that's a component of the composite is reading the word. A component of that, if we want to teach you how to read phonetically, because we know just sight word reading isn't the way to go, then you need to know these sounds. But guess what also you need to do? You need to be able to hear the sounds that you're saying and blend them together to form the word.
Sure.
So there's an auditory channel in this as well, right? So now I'm going to say the sound of the letter, and you're going to tell me what letter makes that sound. And I want to bring both of those components up to fluency levels so that you are not struggling when you are working on the composite. I'm also going to teach you how to sound it out and then blend it together. So now I'm going to combine these learning channels into a multi-learning channel in of itself. I have isolated programs that are tool skills of this. Mm-hmm. That are in isolated learning channels that are variable.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take like an interlinking skill that I'm going to combine some of these to get you really good. And guess what I'm going to get for free? You reading the word.
Yeah.
Or if I don't get it for free, your baseline has elevated from, let's say, 10 words per minute to about 50 words per minute. And our goal is 80 to 100. So the time that I need to have that to be in intervention is just a short window of time. And so it reduces the time in which, or it actually tries to avoid the time in which a learner is frustrated and struggling because you're just going up here. You're saying, hey, you're going to run a marathon. Guess how you're going to practice that? By running a marathon, right? And that's not what you need to do, right? And it's all of these little combinations of skills. It's strength training. It's I don't know. I don't run marathons. Like if someone was chasing me with a knife, I'd run. But but my mother-in-law used to do it all the time, and so it's just like it's leg work, it's strength training, it's breath work. It's also obviously like running short distances to get up to that. So it's endurance building. But there's a lot of other things that you need to do in order to be really good. So that way, when you do run that marathon, you're not going to be like, this is the worst thing in the world.
Sure.
And we are trying to create conditions for our learners so that way they're not saying this is the worst thing in the world, right? Everything we were trying to, we don't want that. That's obviously not something that we want. So we have to look at, and so when you're looking at I know a lot of people who've used the VB map or ABLES as a curriculum, and it's not sequenced in a way. It is roughly, but there's so many more skills that need to be broken down into the elements or component skills to teach those higher composite skills that are identified on the assessment.
I remember when we were transitioning to CentralReach, and it was like all based around the VB map. So if we did the VB map, then it like nice everything fit perfectly.
The golding's there,
but we didn't do the VB map, so we had to like backdoor like how we did it. It's just funny because you made me think about that.
What would you say is, and I hope this question I can make sense of it. It makes sense in my head. In terms of, so recipes is a good analog or a good analogy to use here, right? The idea that to go towards something like the VB map and how nice that would fit systems wide, and then you might feel very good as a BCBA supervising a younger RBT because now they've got this huge inventory of things they can work on, and you can relate them to all these different stimuli. And then at the end of the day, there's some nuance to how those things are ordered, how they're sequenced. You know, the idea that you've got your, again, going back to cooking or baking, the idea that you've got your wet and your dry ingredients, and you can't just throw those things in a bowl. I mean, yes, you might end up with cake.
Those dry ingredients,
right? You might end up with cake.
Bite into some of that baking powder in your cupcake.
So, what's your insight on avoiding that clump? Right? I mean, again, this is probably going to propel us into all sorts of other things because there's a beauty to goal banks and templates, and then there's a sterility, sort of a. It can lose its feel. It can miss the mark if it doesn't have. And you're referencing a lot of those nuances already in what you've discussed. So hopefully that made sense. But what would you say to that? Yeah,
for sure. Okay, there's like
I know. I'm sorry.
Going on.
That's what you did to me. It's your fault.
I want to make sure. Sometimes I get a little
do
rambly.
a component analysis of your thoughts.
Yeah, there you go.
Come up with your composite.
Absolutely constellation in there, and I'll try my best not to be rambly.
Please do be rambly. I think there's a lot to learn from the rambly.
I think that there's the way that I see it, like what I heard when you were describing it. I think that there's two scenarios. I think that there is a scenario where our recipes are like Tom Colicchio recipes. So I like to cook. You say recipes.
Nice.
So part of my bookshelf over here, that's all recipes.
There you go.
And granted, the invention of the internet in all of its glory allows me to, have less cookbooks than I used to. I also have a cookbook that's like a dupe cookbook. It's like, you want to learn how to make Auntie Anne's pretzels. You want to do,
nice.
Mrs. Fields cookies, right? I got that.
And there's a certain precision to that you're trying to achieve as a product. And then there's a process to it. Maybe that helps clarify my question a little bit.
Yeah. So my friend reminded me of this one analogy that I used to use all the time. When I was before I became a cook, I was a baker, in high school.
A lot of precision there.
right? A lot of precision in there.
Yeah.
But when you get and so I was a nanny, and over the summer I would full-time nanny for this one girl. And I was like, we're going to make chocolate chip cookies. I used to kill it. I mean, brownies are my thing, but chocolate chip cookies, I can do this. And they have the recipe on the back. Great. And I would follow the recipe, and every time my cookies would come out different. And I was like, what the hell is happening? I'm using the same amount of butter. I'm following the steps. I'm using this, you got I think from what I remember, there's brown sugar and white sugar, all of the things. I'm doing it. But every time it's like flat, where the highest point of the cookie is the chocolate chip, right? Or it was, and I'm baking it at the same time, all those things. Come to find out, with Instagram, it was the temperature of the butter. The temperature of the butter
there you go.
Will indicate how the cookies show up in a different way, right? The back of the bag doesn't tell me that. And so I think that's where a lot of our clinical experience comes in. Yeah. And so, but I think I think that there is a need and almost a requirement, given where our field is now. I think a lot of our BCBAs are not taught. They go through a very quick master's program, and when they get their bib, getting your BCBA is essentially the bib to enter the race. You just started the marathon, and you still have a long way to go.
But nobody knows more than a new BCBA, though.
Oh, that is for sure. And, that was absolutely me, too. And before kids, I was like, oh, man, all the things I told parents to do without understanding the contingencies that was, showing up in their world. Absolutely.
Then you get the supervisor's job and the salary.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're killing it.
It's ridiculous. But so I think that there is absolutely a need for, the gray-haired BCBAs like us who maybe had a different bit of experience in training to create some of those back of the box recipes, but at the same time, teach the nuance in which. So going back to what I was saying, so Tom Colicchio, is a chef. He was on he was the guy on Top Chef, and his cookbook, while it has recipes, it teaches you about these recipes will only be good based on their ingredients. And so if you're in the winter, look at this, and here's how you change it up. And he teaches you how to be innovative as a chef without having to rely on I did steps 1 through 12. And in the event I have one thing out of place, I don't know what to do. Yeah. Right. Yep. And so having the steps 1 through 12 is good because that's going to get us 80% of the way there. Whether it's you have a client who is, their profile shows up that that is a good intervention for them and they're going to be successful that way. Great. Or if you have there's so many things that can show up, right? The variance in the clients, variance in your BTs, variance in the context in which you're teaching. Yeah. And so there's moments in time where that recipe will not be effective. The same thing with a doctor, right? You show up to a doctor and you're like, hey, I got this going on. And they're like, cool. Perimenopausal woman. We're like, hey, guess what? I can't sleep. I have rambling thoughts. I can't lose weight. And they're like, have you tried counting calories? Like, yeah, man. Right? So it's
my girlfriend's going through the same thing. Yep.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, there is this standard, and you got to make sure that those boxes are checked. But in the event that you're presented with something that's a curveball, whether it's the context of the learner, your BTs are brand new, whatever it is, you need to know how to deal with that curveball. Yeah. And that's where the sophistication comes in. So we need to create, and no one's getting it out there. Well, are getting it out there with respect to, I would say, both their experience in a practicum placement and their experience in a university setting, because a lot of it is just hey, let's just get this going. And there is a demand that needs to be met. So this is not me bad mouthing that, but there's a demand that needs to be met. And that's how our field is showing up about just mass production. Yeah. But we need to we need to create, so with that, my approach is how can I create tools and resources that educate without that being a dependency, a requirement at the onset. So based on your interaction with this software, with this curriculum, with this product, how you will learn about the behavioral constellation that how you can create to identify components or composites, components from composites, right? How you will know how to pivot because like we've guided you that way, because we can't spend any more time and we can't put in any more classes in master's program universities, right? That they're maxed out and they need to get out of there. And it took me 5 years to get my master's at UNR. Like, let's not do that. I'm not saying that that's the answer, right? But let's create ways in which people can learn through their experience with proper mentorship, but through their interaction of the tools and resources that we who have spent 5 years for their master's and then another 3 years for their PhD, right, can then provide them.
I love the word constellation, and I think that's a super important one here, because everything else then, it becomes this straight line. And sure, that works sometimes, but again, back to this, my whole premise with that question was, I think so often in practice it becomes, here's this assessment or this, behavior scale or whatever it is people are using from a standardized medical perspective. Here is the 0 on that parent response, and now we're going to draw a straight line right to that deficit. And again, there's a lot of logic to that. I am not criticizing a very clean linear logic. And then there's what you just talked about, which is,
It's not easy.
No.
But you know what?
No.
Behavior isn't easy. Like it's, the armchair psychologist can like, oh, I'm a behavior analyst. I can analyze your behavior and things like that. But really, it's not easy and it shouldn't be easy. And so when people are out there saying that, like, I created this goal bank and I'm calling it a curriculum, it's doing our field a disservice, it's doing our new practitioners a disservice, and ultimately is doing the clients that we serve a disservice. And we need to embrace the complexity, but it doesn't have to be hard, right? It's complex, but it doesn't have to be hard. And so how can we, given the age of technology and AI, how can we create products that, like the iPhone is sophisticated technology, but when my kids were 2, they knew how to use it without any sort of instruction. They knew how to find their favorite app or watch Daniel Tiger on PBS Kids, right? And so how can we create some sort of that simplistic interaction, user experience, while also gaining skills at the same time? And not dumbing down the sophistication of what needs to be presented to our clients.
Wow, man, there's so much to get into there. Mr. Dan, I'm monopolizing all the time. I know you got some questions on your list, sir.
So we talked about goal banks, and I kind of have, both positive and negative, and I'm curious your thoughts of it from more of kind of like the, BSD applied side of things. The goal banks can have a lot of value, and it seemed like, again, a lot of the electronic data, like, again, I'll just use CentralReach because that's the one I have the most familiarity with. A lot of that, I know when we got onboarded with that was like, look, you can have this goal bank, and I think maybe if you upgrade to a better one, then you can have like this extensive goal bank, which was great because like maybe I don't have a lot of familiarity with toileting, and look, I got these 45 toileting goals I can look through or whatever. So it allows you knowledge from other people, which is great because obviously you can't acquire all of the knowledge yourself. Concurrently, in a field that's run a lot by billable standards, what seemed to happen a lot was I need to hit my billable standards. So what I'm going to do is I've got a client and I'm going to pick this goal, this goal, this goal, this goal, this goal, and just like kind of cookie cutter my way through it without any individualization of it, just so I can get through this report so I can bill my 6 hours to kind of keep it moving. And I know there's a lot of deeper nuances that we can talk about with funding. And in some ways, I think insurance funding actually kind of likes that because they just kind of want to check boxes. It's very clean. It's you've got this child that goes through this curriculum that, it's very clean. So I kind of saw positives and negatives from goal banks. And I know you're talking more curriculum. I'm talking more goal banks, so I want to make sure that that's differentiated there.
You can create a goal bank from a curriculum, but not
absolutely.
all goal banks are curriculum.
Exactly.
I love it. We're
Exactly.
back to that
So,
analogy.
kind of your general thoughts there on goal banks and their usefulness in the field, and if you think they are kind of a net positive or net negative based on the other variables that are in the field as well.
Sure. I think it's how the clinician shows up in their own values. I think, again, we picked our lane, right? And so we're going to get 8 hours of 5-1, or whatever funding company. They're going to limit that. And
apparently only 2 hours a day, which is so fucking absurd.
Right,
Sorry, that's
right,
just a battle that I've been fighting forever.
Agreed. I'm
Sorry.
right there with you. It's absolute bullshit. But also that's what happens when we let insurance people decide things for us and we were not the ones like causing a ruckus.
Oh,
but
man.
anyway,
On the next ABA on tap, that's a whole series, like a 4-part series you just opened up there. All right.
That's my.
We're going to have to open up your
now.
calendar, Dr. Kerri.
Yeah,
Sorry, continue.
let's do it. But so so I think that with that, because if we have businesses to run. And this is not about me making money or anything like that, but if we spend, 40 hours on every assessment, but can only bill 8, then, you got to pay your employees. It's either that employee is not getting paid or the company has overhead costs. And then,
Sure.
and then the issue around that, it's not about it's about the company being able to serve clients.
Of course.
Right. So it is what it is. But with that, so I think that we need to have, again, things that allow our work to be efficient.
Yes.
And goal banks do so.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And now the question is that, are you taking that goal bank? Well, one, given what we just said, I don't think we need to reiterate, is that okay, how was that goal bank created? But let's just talk about the use of hey, here's something. Let's say it's the most magical thing ever. And you just apply it. You still have to personalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And so just ensuring that the behavior analyst personalizes it for the client. I think it's absurd that insurance companies are within the first 8 hours of you meeting this client, tell me all the things that you're going to do in the next 6 months. And it's just
and how long they're going to need services
right?
for. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're so many times the client doesn't show you who they are within the first 8 hours, right? And so often I would create an initial assessment or initial curriculum from, the initial assessment and had to completely rework it throughout that first 6 months. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a bit there, but it's just how you can only do what you know. And so based on what I know for this client, I need to make sure that I personalize this toileting thing or whatever it is. But I think that, it is our diligence as clinicians to ensure that, we need to maintain regulatory compliance and compliance with our funders and things like that. But we need to do the best for our clients. And if that means that, there needs to be significant adjustments because you now know more because you've been with the client more, then you need to update those things and, have addendums and requests for more time or less time or whatever it is, right? However it shows up. But I think the use of tools to make the administrative part of it, I think that is important and necessary. I think it's just we need to ensure the vetting of all of those goal banks that were written by someone who should be an expert in instructional design. And I would say oftentimes they are not.
Yeah, I really like that. And we've, had some people on talking about AI as well. And efficiency is a great thing, although that word brings up some PTSD because historically when I've worked for other companies, it's always been efficiency and the ability to bill more hours. So I feel like if it can be efficiency to allow you to either actually review the data or spend more face-to-face time with the client to see if the data is actually representing, because I was an RBT for a long period of time, and just because you put a data point doesn't mean it's accurate. So is the efficiency being used for a clinical reason, or is it just being used to now allow somebody to have more inefficient or indirect billing hours? So it can kind of...
I love that you said that because one of my soapboxes right now is that, so it's naive of us to think that we can do anything outside of electronic health record, right? Given all of our our reporting requirements and audits. And, if you want to be accredited with, ACQ or whoever, right? You need to live in the digital world.
Yep.
But I would say the majority of our electronic health record companies have prioritized operational efficiency and have not spent adequate time growing the garden of clinical care. So if we look at, some of these products, now there's some that I've seen at presentations and I'm like, okay, you're showing up. But a lot of the clinical care models are still operating under practices that were 20 years ago. And there's been a lot of innovation around how we provide care, areas of care that we now prioritize, which one of our electronic health records are collecting ascent data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right? Like,
I love it.
Are we able to identify the number of ascent withdrawals per program? So I can make it a review of how many, like, is it like from my precision teaching, and when I did paper data, I would look at, we collected ascent data, and it was like, is it around a learning channel? Is it around a content area? Is it around, do we have more ascent withdrawals around programs that are new? I can do this level of analysis with paper data. Granted, it took me a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that was back when I could bill for indirect hours. But we don't have any of that now.
Yeah.
I can even do it. We'll look at decisions made. Which one of our health record EMRs allow us to analyze the number of decisions made per week per case to look at clinician activity? And I'm not only talking about change decisions, I'm also talking about decisions in which you say, this is good and I want to stay the course.
Sure.
And so, there's a lot of, and then I can evaluate a client's progress by saying, look, on this program, all of these phase change lines were decisions to make harder. Oh, but on this program, all of these phase change lines were decisions to make easier. And as such, they require more intervention. And so I didn't start them out at the right point, or something else is showing up for the client, right? And so I can I can evaluate agility by looking at things this way. I also need to have some sort of structured curriculum as well to look at curricular leaps. But there's so many things that, and this stuff is in the world of precision teaching, has been in existence since I started precision teaching,
Sure.
25 years ago, that the electronic health records company they're like, well, you know what? The fact that you do a mass trial of 10 responses of this program, or what the innovative care allows us to do is that you don't have to do mass trials anymore. You can jump around with trial across programs or something like that, but you may still have to scroll. So the amount of innovation that that are the companies that we subscribe to, that I've put to operational efficiency, which was necessary and needed,
Yes.
Sure.
but not to the detriment of care enhancement. And so as such, we are now in a state where funders, and whether that's given our political climate or that's just because they're like, hey, time's ticking and you behavior analysts haven't shown up to talk about outcomes in the way the rest of the medical field has, is that we have to defend our care in a way that is we've never seen before. And us saying, well, this one learner, no. They don't give a shit about one learner. Yeah. They want to talk about all of their clients, or all of their members, right? And because we've built systems that allow ABA to grow, to expand, to meet the demand, again, necessary but not sufficient, that we are now in a state, because everyone is on EMRs, we don't have the sophistication of being able to report on outcomes, because all of these systems they're not looking at anything that we, at least in the precision teaching world, would look at to be able to talk about meso level data or meta level data. They're all focusing on micro and a bit of macro, but you need the whole system in order to say, find trends and analyses and start clustering and understanding, hey, this learner walks in my door and they show up as this profile. like it's an educated guess, but I'm saying like I've seen a lot of clients like that. And with that, with this type of curriculum, with these types of like these interventions, we're able to see these gains in this amount of time. And that's what these insurance companies are asking for. You look at a heart doctor and you have, a man and 65 walk in that's, 250 pounds who doesn't necessarily exercise, like that's not enough muscle, right? And maybe he smoked for, 20 years back in his, right? And they're like, okay, given this profile, you need to do these things and you can, and now these symptoms will be reduced by this much.
Yeah.
Right? And we can't, we can't do that in ABA.
Oh, no. We don't do that in ABA. Don't even think about it, girl. Please return for part 2 of our interview with Dr. Kerri Milyko and...
Always analyze responsibly.
ABA on Tap is recorded live and unfiltered. We're done for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time.